Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I bring you Helen Maroulis. I've had tons of amazing guests on this show, well over 100 now, billionaires, astronauts, professional athletes, world-renowned entrepreneurs, and they've shared their insider secrets for success. They've offered everything from top book recommendations to success hacks to action items that you can use today to see results immediately. If you're like me, you love this kind of stuff. And if you're like me, you want to get the Cliff Notes, or I guess these days they call them the Spark Notes. Well, you can get access to the action plans from your favorite guests, like Spartan Race founder Joe DeSena from episode 27, or Navy SEAL Mark Devine from episode 45, or maybe fitness guru Tony Horton from episode 85, plus other amazing tips and tactics to help you get clear on how to get from where you're at to where you want to be. I put all this in one place because you're busy and you want to get what you need quickly so you can move on with your day. Here's what I want you to do. Go to jimharshawjr.com/action to get instant access to everything I just talked about. That's jimharshawjr.com/action. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, there are 3 dots on your screen. Just touch the 3 dots, select View Full Description. There you'll see the link to download all of the incredible resources and action plans that I just mentioned. Now for today's guest. Born and raised in Maryland, Helen won her first world championship in women's wrestling in 2015 by outscoring her opponents 35-0. At the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio, Helen became the first ever American to win a gold medal in women's freestyle wrestling at the Olympic Games. In the gold medal match, Helen defeated Saori Yoshida, a 13-time world champion and 3-time Olympic champion, the most successful wrestler in the history of the sport, and an opponent who'd beaten Helen twice before. Helen is truly a legend in her own time. And for the listener, if you don't have time to listen to the entire episode, or if you hear something you like but you don't have time to write it down, make sure you grab your free copy of the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. Helen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for making time. I know you're busy. You are wrestling in a league in India now, in addition to all the stuff you do for Team USA. So thank you for making time for this. So this is exciting. Can you give us a little just sort of a 30,000-foot view of your life, of maybe a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and how you found wrestling?
Yeah, sure. So I started wrestling when I was 7 years old, just off of a fluke. My little brother had joined the sport, and there weren't enough kids on the team, so the coach told my mom to just bring him back next year, and she didn't want to do that, so she just told me to take my shoes off, jump in there, and be his dummy. And after about 2 weeks of sprints and push-ups and getting beat up by the boys, I went to my parents and I said, hey, this isn't fair. I'm doing everything that the boys are doing, but they get to compete and I don't. And if you knew me at the time, I was asked to quit every sport I'd ever joined, ballet, dancing, gymnastics, because I was really shy and I would shut down if anyone watched me and I would just cry. So my dad definitely didn't think I would step on the mat. So he makes this bet with me that I'll let you wrestle one match. And if you win that, you can continue wrestling. And so that was the only match that I won all year. I was 1-30, but I got to continue wrestling. So I grew up wrestling boys till I was 16. And then I moved away from home to train with females. And in freestyle, women's freestyle wrestling. And so that's been my career so far.
So 1-30 was your first year record, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't that turn you off?
I think the highest motivator that we really have is love. And for me, all these other sports that I tried, gymnastics or ballet or diving, I was afraid of doing backflips, or with diving, I was afraid of heights, and with ballet, I was afraid of being watched. And with wrestling, I just love the sport. You're kind of in your own, you get to be in your own head and your own world while you're wrestling and working through moves. And it's always challenging and it's always changing because you're going with new bodies. And I think really just the love for the sport and finally finding something where I felt like I belonged and I fit in. Not like belonged amongst the guys, but in my head, I belong to this sport. Like I fit with it.
Yeah. You said the highest motivator, you believe the highest motivator is love. Talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So that stems from, my faith, first of all. And the highest calling we have is for myself is to love God and love others as yourself. So that's where that comes from, a biblical standpoint. And then on another note, that's like more, action-based, I read this article and it talks about the difference between love and duty. And, if you're working a 9-to-5 job, when you're done at 5, you want to go home. And your duty is to, stay through for the whole job and go home. Whereas when you're working a 9-to-5 job and you love that job, you'll stay over. You'll go the extra mile if there's something you didn't get done, but you love it. You want to keep working on it. Your duty isn't going to motivate you to keep doing the extra hours or to put in the extra work, but love will motivate you. And the other example was like when you love someone and they, your spouse comes home and you want to pick them, they fly in like super late, and you're so excited to see them. You don't mind driving to the airport to pick them up, even though you're tired, or, just things like that. When you really think what is the motivator behind that, it really is love. So I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah, that is powerful. And I appreciate you sharing that because most of the folks listening to this podcast are not competitive athletes. Maybe they were at one point in their lives or maybe not, but they're folks who are out in the real world going through the grind, the 9-to-5. And I'll be honest, probably a lot of people are afraid to really chase that thing that they want because it's hard, it's scary, and there's a lot of challenges. And I know you face a lot of challenges in the sport of wrestling. I mean, it's a hard enough sport as it is, let alone being a girl growing up doing this sport. And there's all boys in the room. And I know you said that when you had bad days that if a guy had a bad day, coach would say, get back to work harder. But if you had a bad day, people would say, see, Helen, this is why you shouldn't be wrestling. How did you deal with that?
It's really interesting. I mean, again, I think the beauty of being a 10-year-old girl in the sport is, in some ways, I was just very young and naive to just the context of some of the things that they were saying. And so, I'm, if somebody said that to me now, I'd probably process it a lot differently than when they said it when I was 10 years old. But really what it came down to is that, I love this sport and my mom saw that and, my parents saw that and they were willing to support whatever it took to help me just continue to do it. And so if a coach would say something or if they, all those things, they honestly, they really helped me. I didn't come from, some, I didn't have anything like super hard or challenging in my life. And wrestling was that arena. And so every challenge that came about, to me, it was like, well, of course, this is normal. Like to them, women's wrestling is taboo. So I didn't victimize myself. It was just like, of course they're going to say this. What do I expect? I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. But if I stand here and argue with them about why it's not right, then I'm taking away energy and my time of actually pursuing my goal. So I'll just, keep my head down, pursue my goal. And then when I achieve what I want to achieve, that's going to speak for itself. And so, the harder I worked, I just always had to prove myself. And I remember, talking to boys, and I felt like I really, really, when a coach was willing to work with me, I appreciated that to such a higher level because I knew what it was like for them to not. And I knew that I can't get better without someone coaching me. So when someone was willing to coach me, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm the luckiest person in the whole world. Thank you. I'll do whatever you say. If you tell me to come in extra, if you tell me to stay late, because I was so grateful for that. And I really think that helped me and that helped my mindset.
You mentioned gratitude, and I just got back from the NCAA wrestling championships, and it's interesting when so many of these wrestlers came off the mat, the best wrestlers in the country, so many of them on their ESPN interview would talk about gratitude. Is that an important mindset that you feel like you carry with you, or how important is that to you?
I think gratitude is an extremely important mindset. First, I think there's always going to be something that we can't control. Some factors we can't control, or things might not go our way. And every single person has something going on in their life, I could get upset that I'm injured right now. Well, there's someone else that's going through something. There's someone that might be overtrained, or there's someone that is also injured. And so everyone's going through something. So really what it comes down to, and I think the beauty of gratitude is that it frees you from your external circumstances. Like, yes, these things are going on, but I don't have to choose to associate with that. And I'm just going to choose to be thankful for whatever's going on. And that kind of gives you this power and this freedom. And I think for the wrestlers, that when you can just tell that at the NCAAs, like, you can tell who's just really in the zone, loving it, not feeling the pressure. And I think when you're just grateful to get to do what you love and be in the sport, I think that helps you be in that mindset.
Yeah. And for the listener, I just want you to translate everything Helen's saying into your own life, because sure, you're not probably not a competitor, most likely not anywhere near Helen's level if you are, but just translate these into your own words, into your own life, how you can use gratitude in your own life, and what are you grateful for right here, right now, because I think they can just change your mindset on how you go through your day and the things that we're all chasing. We're chasing, right, these dreams and these goals and hopes out there, but Helen, you have also talked about how growing up you had a lot of anxiety and a lot of nervousness going into matches. Is that right?
Yes.
And how have you overcome that?
So I've said this before in some interviews, and I really believe that our strengths are also our weaknesses, and our weaknesses are also our strengths. So anxiety is overthinking, and when I didn't monitor it, and when I just kind of was like, crap, I have it and it's affecting me, obviously that would translate into I just couldn't keep it together in matches or in training. In training, nothing was ever good enough. I was always hard on myself. It was always, this person's better, or I bet you this person's better than me, and just this always negative energy, and this overthinking, and even physical, like my face would go numb before matches, and I would just get really overwhelmed. And so I just remember one day, after I lost the 2012 Olympic trials, I remember crying at my coach's house to his wife, and I was bawling, and I'm like, why would God make me this way? Like, why would he give me talent, like God-given talent in wrestling? Why would he give me the drive to want to win? Why would he give me this dream and then give me this terrible mind? Why would he give me anxiety? And so I was crying to her, and I'm like, do you know any Olympic champions that win, that have bad anxiety? And she was like, Helen, I don't really know. I'm sorry. And I was just...
Who was that you asked?
My coach's wife. Okay. And she had anxiety too, and she had missed out on the Olympics for cross country running. And so I was like, man, I don't want to, like, I just was like devastated. And so I was just angry with God, and I felt like he's like, you keep looking for it to be a certain way, a certain journey, a certain path. And why don't you just let go and trust me and do this my way, and see how this, I made you exactly how you are for a reason. So your anxiety, you're supposed to have that, and you're going to use it, and you're going to overcome it, which doesn't mean that I get rid of it, but it means that I can be more than a conqueror in that area. And so my anxiety actually helped me come 2016 Olympics, because instead of every time when anxious thoughts came up, instead of being like, oh no, this isn't good, I'd be like, wow, this is awesome. Like, because I'm more anxious than other people, I get more of an opportunity to deal with it on a daily basis. So that means like I'm better at handling it, because I'm dealing with it more. And I have these, tools to help me, monitor things and think through and form it in a positive way and give it to God and make it beneficial. But when the Olympics came around, what I noticed was every single athlete that I saw had this level of tension on their face, where it was like, man, I've never seen this opponent look this tense before. Like, I've always seen them look kind of calm, and it was almost like, that it's every 4 years, and you try and be peaked and you try and be in the right mindset, but there's that voice in the back of your head that's like, hey, this is everything you've wanted and you have one shot for the next 4 years and you might not ever get it again. And so I think I was used to dealing with that level of tension my whole life. So by the time the Olympics came around, I'm like, oh, I'm so used to being anxious. Like we're good to go. So it actually ended up being a positive thing. And now I say that as long as you monitor it and turn it to be productive and healthy, then I think it can be a good thing. And in that sense, I wouldn't call it anxiety. I would just call it overanalyzing and overthinking and, so.
And a lot of folks that I work with, a lot of the listeners are folks who overanalyze. They think that maybe one more podcast or one more book or one more week, and then I'll get to it, and then I'll start taking action. They sort of overanalyze and they get paralyzed by that. And it's interesting. And for talking to the listener right now, Helen just shared a weakness, and she has chosen to make this a strength. And so I want you to think about, what is a weakness that you have? What is a handicap that you have, and how can you turn that into a strength? And it starts with the choice of making that choice of making this into a strength, and then figuring out a way that it really can be. And I remember I have asthma, and I had a lot of I have moderate to severe asthma, and I remember training a lot, and I'd have a lot of just really minor asthma attacks. But if during wrestling practice, and if you're trying to max out your body at 100% capacity, even 10 or 15% of less of your lung capacity is a lot, right? But I remember thinking that my body has to work harder to get oxygen, and so I'm actually getting a better workout than everybody else in the room, right? So it's just this mindset that you can either allow defeat you, or you can say this is a strength. And Helen, so you talked about surrender. And you've talked about, I've heard you talk about your mantra, and you can actually see your lips moving whenever you're standing next to Yoshida going into your gold medal match in 2016. The camera's on your face, and you can see you speaking your mantra. Can you talk about your mantra and how that may have helped you?
Yeah. So my mantra was, Christ in me, I am enough. And about 4 days before the Olympics, I got thrown on my head, hurt my neck, and I was just devastated. I couldn't train, and I didn't even know if I'd be able to move my neck by the time Olympics came. And so I was watching this sermon, and the pastor talked about, Christ is in me, I'm enough. And this is a tool that you use to claim that power and to just be in that peace and in that flow. And so when I was at the Olympics, especially the days leading up, I think sometimes I know that I can look for, okay, am I on the right track? Is this going well? That means that I must be ready to win or something. But there was no marker. There was nothing that was like, yeah, Helen, you're going to make weight. Yep, Helen, this is a good sign that you're ready, that like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I think that really put me in this place of like, well, the Olympics are coming no matter what. It's 3 days away. Like I can't pause, rewind, fast forward. Like it's no matter what, it's coming. And I did everything I could to the best of my ability to be ready. If that means I am ready, or if that means I'm not, either way, I'm stepping on that mat. And so the Christ is in me, I'm enough was this just freeing mantra where I realized I don't have to be the best to win. I just have to be better in that 6 minutes than the person I'm wrestling. I don't have to be the fastest. I just have to be faster. I don't have to be the strongest. I just have to be stronger, or strong enough to win, fast enough to win. And so leading up to the Olympics, I think I was looking for perfection. And I'm like, when I'm the fastest, when I'm the strongest, I'll know that I'm ready to win. And I never got that confirmation, obviously. And everyone would be like, why don't you, why did you think practice wasn't good today? Like, it was great. And I'm like, no, because this was wrong. And, I could have done this. And so the Christ is in me, I'm enough was really just taking a step back and being like, yeah, it doesn't need to be perfect. And the more I chase perfection, the more I'm just actually setting myself up to, be unhappy. And so I was really happy the day I competed. I'm like, I'm winning with my strengths and I'm winning with my weaknesses. Like, yes, I didn't perfect the single leg, but if my imperfect single leg is enough to get the takedown, then I'm taking it. So, it was kind of that mentality.
I interviewed the former head men's tennis coach at the University of Virginia, a coach by the name of Brian Boland. And for the listener, you can listen to that episode, just a couple of episodes behind this episode. And he won 4 of 5 national championships, 4 out of 5 years. So for any wrestling folks listening, he's basically the Cale Sanderson, Penn State of men's tennis. He's now working with the USTA, but he talked about how he stopped focusing so much on winning, and he started focusing on mastering his craft. And he said whenever he did that, he went from a perennial powerhouse, Final Four, losing in the NCAA final match, to actually winning championships. He jumped it to that next level. And Helen, you've talked about at the Olympics, there was no tension. You just said there was just pure happiness, pure joy. And this is a goal you've had since you were 8 years old. And now the moment's here. And instead of being nervous and having tension, there was joy. And you said that before Rio, winning the Olympics stopped being your goal. Can you explain that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, that's crazy. So when I lost in 2012, when I recommitted to 2016, I remember just being devastated. And, when I came back. Can you
talk a little bit more about that? Because I asked everybody on the show to tell me a story about when a time they failed. So can you maybe just go and take this time, since you're already talking about it, to go a little more in depth about that loss?
Yeah. So, I just come on national team. I just made the world team in 2011. I qualified the weight for the Olympics by taking 5th at the World Championships, and I had won the national, so I was already in the finals of Olympic trials. So all I had to do was win 2 matches, and I was going to be on the Olympic team.
2 out of 3, right?
Yeah, 2 out of 3, and so that was my dream. And I actually thought I was going to wrestle someone else. The top 2 girls missed weight. And so the person I ended up wrestling, I was confident, and I was like, okay, I'm going to win. So there wasn't anything where I didn't believe I was going to win. I mean, I really did, and I lost. And I was really so devastated. I remember, and let me just put it into perspective. If the worst thing that happens in your life is losing the Olympic trials, like, that's not that bad. But I didn't realize how much I made it a part of my identity, and how much I think I felt that once I make this Olympic team, I'll be worthy, or I'll be, somebody. Like, I just didn't, I was confident about my wrestling, but I wasn't confident about myself as a person. And I don't think there was a lot of self-love. And I don't know if those were the direct things that affected I don't know. I think loss is mind, body, soul. So there's wrestling things that I needed to fix, and there's mental things, and there were, soul things that I needed to fix. But that, I've said before, like, when you give 100% and you lose, you really, it's such a hard, you really have to, you just have to own the fact that you weren't good enough, or whatever. And I was very negative at that time. So I thought, just really bad, just not a good place for me to be. And I was depressed for months. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to wrestle. And so I just remember, I'm done with wrestling. Like, I'm retiring. This doesn't make me happy anymore. I'm tired of riding the highs of winning and the lows of losing. Like, I can't be on this roller coaster anymore. This doesn't give me joy. And, and so when I felt like God was like, hey, come back and do it my way. I didn't say yes, because it was this exchange where if I do it your way, you'll win the Olympics. I didn't really think I was going to win the Olympics. At any point was I super sure. It was more just, God, I'm going to do this. I'm giving this 4 more years. You have 4 years. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. Whatever you want me to do, whatever you want me to change about myself as a person, I'm giving you 4 years, because I just don't want to have regret. Like, literally, I was so broken. I'm like, 4 more years, because I know if I just give everything 4 more years, I can just live the rest of my life in peace. I just don't want to look back and have regret. And so, there were a lot of times through those 4 years where I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I think I might be able to win the Olympics. Or like, hey, you know what? Like, I won worlds. If I just keep going, don't stop now, keep pushing. Like, I can win next year. And yeah, Yoshida, she's almost unbeatable, but anything's possible. And so it was never this total assurance, but there were times where I got more excited and had more belief in myself. But by the a month before Olympics, the 2016 Olympics, I actually was going to quit because I thought I wasn't going to make weight. And I had been working with a nutritionist, with a doctor. It was really hard for me to go from 65 kilos to 53 kilos. And I was trying to do it in the healthiest way possible. I was monitoring every single, like down to the T, 24 hours a day was just monitored. And, it was just, took a lot of discipline. And we were at a camp in Spain, and there, 7 out of my 16 competitors were there. Not only was I like 7 kilos heavier than everyone, but everyone beat me. And I just remember walking home back to the hotel from practice every day, like bawling, like uncontrollably on the streets, like no shame, just bawling. And I was like, God, like you brought me this far. And
shortly before the Olympics, you say?
Yeah, this is like 4 weeks before the Olympics.
Wow.
And I'm crying, and coach is like, all right, well, let's just go walk a couple extra miles a day, put in some extra runs, like, eat a little bit less. Like no matter what we tried, like nothing was working. And I got back to Colorado, and I was like, look, I got to go see my parents for a couple days. And I went home, and when I came back, I just remember I was journaling, and I was like, all right, God, if I could ask you for anything right now, I would ask you to just please let me start losing weight. And just please let me just know that I can make this weight class. Like, it's so selfish to miss weight, and there's girls behind me that can wrestle and they can make weight. And like, I don't want to go and not like that. To me, it's like, I can't, like, that will devastate me. And, so I was like, please, if I just lose some kilos, like, please help me out. And then I'll be happy. And he's like, okay, well, if I give you that, what will you ask for next? And I'm like, well, if I lose weight, then I'm probably going to ask for my, for my training to be ready. He's like, okay, and if I give you that, then what? And I'm like, well, if my training's ready and my weight's good, then I'm going to ask for, I want the tournament to come already. But, the tournament can't come already. So I'm going to ask for, just keep me relaxed while I'm waiting. And, then when the tournament comes, because everything was going right, I'm, going to want to win and ask for that. And then after that, I'm going to ask for a break and vacation. And then when I'm on vacation, I'm going to miss wrestling and I'm going to ask to come back. And so he kind of just showed me that you'll be on this cycle of constantly asking for things, or you keep thinking that when this changes, this will get better. And he's like, I just need you to pause and, be grateful and be in the moment. And so I would just journal. I would wake up an hour early every day. And I was like, I can't control how the weight's going. I'm doing everything that I'm told. I'm doing everything right. But obviously I can't force it to go down at this point. And I'm like, but I can control this first hour of my day. And I'm going to choose joy, and I'm going to choose gratitude, and I'm going to choose to just, be in a good place. And so I did that every day, through and past the Olympics. But by the time the Olympics came around, in those 3 weeks, it was kind of life altering, because I would read my journal and I was like, man, God, I thought that I always wanted this gold medal, but I already got everything that I wanted out of this. Like, I'm no different than the person that took silver. We both get the same things out of this sport. And I got the perseverance, and I got the work ethic, and I got the lessons from going through these challenges, and all these things that I'm going to use in my life, I already have. And so I didn't need to win at that point. It was more like, I'm just doing it to enjoy it. Sorry, that's a long ramble.
That was an amazing ramble. For the listener, I want you to think, just take a pause for a moment and ask yourself, like, are you at that point? Are you at that point where you're thinking about quitting? Are you at the point where you're walking down the street outwardly crying? Are you at that point? Most of us are not, but maybe we've been at that point sometime in our lives, and most certainly we'll be at that point or some low point in the future in our lives somewhere. But understanding that it's still possible, that the best in the world have the same feelings, have the same experiences, have the same doubts, have the same failures, have the same story. Your story is a little bit has different characters and different scenarios, but it's the same story. And when we understand that the best in the world go through this, then we can certainly get through it as well. And so, Helen, take us to the match with Yoshida. So you're stepping on the mat with a 13-time world gold medalist, a 3-time Olympic gold medalist. Take us just briefly to that match and how you felt stepping on that mat and how it felt to win.
I don't think I'll ever truly have the words to explain what that whole moment was like, but I'll say this.
There was a point where I just paused and realized, like, Yoshida's a 3-time Olympic gold medalist. She could have retired, and she would have retired a legend, and she didn't. She chose to pursue this sport another cycle, and what strength and dedication and just like all of that takes. And I just remember thinking it was a blessing to get to wrestle her. It was such a blessing. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to win, but one day I'm going to tell my kids, like, I got to wrestle this legend in Olympic finals. And I'm grateful that, our eras, crossed. And so to me, I would say my match with North Korea was my hardest, where that was the one where I almost lost. In fact, that girl, she literally was a better wrestler than me. She stopped everything. I mean, I just wanted it so bad. I ended up winning in the last minute. That was my hardest match. And then in the semifinals going against Sweden was like, this girl's always stopped me, and she's beaten me before, and she's beat me, and then she goes on to wrestle Yoshida. And so there was just this, like, not anger, but it was just this, like, like, I don't want you to get in my way again. Like, I refuse. Like, and so after those two, by the time I got to Yoshida, I'm like, this is the cherry on top. Like, this is everything I've wanted. It's a blessing. And I knew if I didn't get to the finals and wrestle her, I was never going to wrestle her again. Like, I would never have the opportunity ever again, because I knew she was going to retire. So in that moment, I just had so much joy and happiness. I remember at one point in the warm up, I'm jogging around and I was like, all right, Helen, do not look over at her. Like, do not look over at her. Stay in your zone, focus on yourself. Do not look over at her, because you're going to see how great she is and you're going to get nervous. And I remember looking over, seeing her do this, like, blast double, and I'm like, who am I thinking that I can wrestle this woman? And then I was like, dang it, Helen, shut up. Like, no. I was like, that's not true. I'm like, you know what? You don't need to know beforehand. You don't need 100% assurance. You just need to go out there and leave everything on that mat. And, so it was just crazy experience. I mean, there's so much back and forth. I mean, I remember right after my semifinals, I went to go see the massage therapist and had him rub out my forearms. And I was like, man, I know I'm going to win the Olympics. And he's like, I know. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like, I don't know if I'm ready for the responsibility. Like, that was all I was thinking about. Like, it was it all of a sudden wasn't about wrestling anymore. But then 5 minutes later, I was like, man, a silver medal is pretty awesome. Like, and I'm like, what are you thinking, Helen? Like, stop. You haven't even wrestled for the gold yet. Like, don't, so I'm just sharing that because, again, like I said, I've had anxiety and overthinking, and a lot of thoughts go through my head. And I think the big thing is when a thought goes through your head and it's not what you like or what you would like to be thinking, like, just recognize that you are not that thought, and to separate and to just be merciful and graceful with yourself. So I'm like, oops, probably shouldn't have thought that. All right, well, let's think of 3 positive thoughts to replace that one. And, the match with her was epic. So I don't think while I wrestle, otherwise I would really share some more stuff during the match, but
yeah. And for the listener, I will have a link to the video of that match. And it shows them, before the match, Helen and Yoshida. So it's just a fascinating match to watch. And, it's just interesting, for the listener, understand that, these thoughts and these feelings come whenever you're taking a risk, when you're doing something hard, you're chasing after a goal, chasing after a dream. And it's easy to feel that feeling of anxiety and fear, and just back down and say, you know what, I'm just going to set my goals a little bit lower. Like even Helen, you said, silver medal would be just fine, but then you fought that thought away. And so many people go through life shying away from that risk, shying away from those feelings of fear and anxiety, and but you didn't, and that's when you have an opportunity for great things to happen. And for the listener, this doesn't mean you have to go try to win a gold medal. This could mean just trying to fix your relationship, or get healthy, or striving for that promotion, or starting that business, or whatever that is in your life that you want to achieve that you're struggling with right now. Helen, can you help the listener understand maybe an action item that they could take in the next 24 to 48 hours in thinking about their lives and their goals, and something that maybe it's something that you do, or something you can recommend that they can take, an action they can take in the next 24 to 48 hours?
An action item that I would recommend to take. I'm a huge fan of journaling. Maybe a lot of people already do that, but I really like to journal and to write things down. I think I you write better than the way you think it. Thinking, it's a bit hard to monitor every thought that comes in, and whereas writing, you're like, I'm not going to choose to write it this way. And so I think that's helped me to put perspective on things in a more positive way. And then I would say the biggest thing is to be very patient, forgiving with yourself, and to ask yourself why. I ask myself why a lot. Why am I doing this? Why am I saying this? Why am I, acting this way? Or sometimes I think I'm choosing the harder path, and I'll ask myself why. And I'm like, no, I'm actually just doing that because I like that route better than this other route. And so I'm going to choose that other route just for the fact that I know that I'll like it less, and just, I think pausing to just, ask yourself why kind of just helps. Like, is it fear-based? And if it's fear-based, whatever scares you, just run towards it, because I promise that's like the only way to get over it. So
yeah, whatever scares you, run towards it. That's a great quote. And for the listener, I'm having all these bullet points and all these action items and everything that Helen shared here. I'm going to have this in the action item and the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. And for the longtime listener, you know what a productive pause is. For the new listener, I always ask these types of questions about habits that my listeners have, et cetera. And it's always some form of pause that they credit with their success. And I define a productive pause as a short period of focused reflection around specific questions that leads to clarity of action and peace of mind. And, Helen, you talked about journaling, and I consider that a form of a productive pause. I've had other folks who talk about meditation or prayer or hiring a coach or in some other way, hitting the pause button, getting off the treadmill of life and actually evaluating, and then so they can get clarity of action and peace of mind. So thank you for sharing that. I think journaling's a great exercise. How about a tool or a technology or something that you feel like helps you be more productive or more effective in what you do? My listeners like these sorts of tools and tactics. So anything you can recommend there?
Tools?
It could be an app that you use. It could be a supplement or technology or anything like that.
Well, I have really amazing supplement sponsors that I literally love their products.
Give them a shout out.
So there, it's Nutridyne, and right now I'm using their. So for some that don't know, I got a concussion in India, and that's what I've been rehabbing for the last couple months. So I just started taking this Brain Restore powder by Nutridyne, and it's just been awesome. So I think my recovery is going extremely well. I think I feel more alert and just clear, and which is crazy because I have a concussion. But I think it's a really good product. So I like it. I'm going to continue to take it even after the concussion, especially when I'm back in school again. So it's called Brain Restore Powder by Nutridyne.
And for the listener, we'll have a link in the action plan for that. So awesome. And tell the listener what you're doing in India.
So in India, I was in a pro wrestling league, and I know that they have the Bundesliga and they have the league in Iran, but for men and women, this is the only league in the world that they have right now. And so you get auctioned and bought on a team, and then your team wrestles 6 other teams. And so it was awesome. I had Ketik Sabalov on my team, who's world champ, and he was a silver medalist to Jordan Burroughs this year. And then I had Vladimir Kachingashvili, he's Olympic champ and world champ, and had Soon, who's Olympic bronze medalist from China, 48 kilos. So it was like this great. I mean, I think I wrestled, all my matches were not all, but a lot of them were world and Olympic medalists. So my first match where I got the concussion was against the Olympic bronze medalist and the girl that I wrestled in the finals of 2017 World Championships.
Wow. So, what an experience.
Yeah. So it was like great wrestling, great to just, you literally got to train with your team every day. So I get to wrestle like Romanov and Sabalov and Bekbalatov. And I'm like, man, this is awesome, and you get to be in a league. Of course, the only downside was the concussion, but
sure. Well, wish you all the best in your recovery. And can you share with us, Helen, one book? Maybe, I don't know if you read a lot of books or not. If there's a book that has maybe had an impact or influence on you that you might recommend to the listener.
Oh man, Man, I don't know why this is my favorite book. I mean, it's called Jacob the Baker. It's by Noah Ben Shea. It's just I just love this book. It's about a baker who's got a lot of wisdom and accidentally writes it on pieces of notes, and they get stuck in the bread one day, and when the people in the town start reading it, they come back and they're like, can you keep putting notes in the bread, or can you speak to us and give us wisdom? And so he shares it. It's so good. It's such a it's a short book. It's a super easy read, but I just love this book.
Man, excellent. That is one that we have not yet heard on this podcast. So thank you for the recommendation. Again, for the listener, I'll have that in the action plan, jimharshawjr.com/action. Helen, thank you so much for making time to come on the show. Can you share with the listener how we can find you on the internet, follow you on social media, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Twitter. The name for that is Helen HELEN _Maroulis MAROULIS, and then my website's being revamped right now, but that's coming up because I'm going to start blogging. So that was the thing that scared me. So I'm running to it. Excellent. Yeah, so I'll be on YouTube shortly.
Good. Well, we will all be tuning in, Helen. Thank you so much for making time to come on the show. And for the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.